Welcome to What's Going On, the weekly podcast and videocast of First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of What's Going On. I'm Pastor Katie here at First United Methodist in Yankton, South Dakota, and I'm glad you could join me for this episode. As you're watching this episode, if you're watching it as it comes out, it means that I am actually on retreat in Rapid City this week. This is a pre-recorded episode before I left, so I promise I'm not doing extra work while I'm supposed to be retreating. But in this episode, I want to talk a little bit about something that I am very excited about, and I've been waiting a while to be able to share it with all of you, and that is a new discipleship program called Disciples Developing Disciples. Part of the reason I'm very excited about this is that this is actually a program that I've been developing now for years. It began as a project for a graduate certificate program that I did in practical church leadership, which was a nonprofit concentration for nonprofit administration at Dakota Wesleyan for church leaders. And that certificate program required a major project. And I decided that one of my passions is discipleship, because I believe that that is at the core of our mission. It's the core of our callings. It's part of why we exist as churches. And often we don't have a good way to encourage people down the road to a deeper discipleship. And so I wanted to really look at applying some things that I've been learning in some other areas of my life into the world of discipleship training. And so that led me to create the first variation of this, which I led the church in Beersford through before I left there. And then obviously in a change of pastoral situation and with everything COVID and blah, 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 all of that. In the last year, I've really gotten to dig deep again into this and start adapting it and applying it. So I've been developing it this last year. We had the youth group go through this version, and we have some minor tweaks here and there that we discovered in that process, which was part of the reason we were doing it, so that we could launch it fully with you this fall. And so you're going to read about it in the newsletter, and here's the podcast to kind of fully explain where this came from, why we're doing it, how it works. And then you're just going to be getting more and more information about it. And hopefully kind of as you choose to participate, again, this is not something that we can force you to do by any means, but it is my hope that you want to be deeper and grow in your discipleship, and that this will be a way to do that. So I want to share a little bit about what inspired this, because it might help make sense of what it looks like and how we're doing what we're doing. So way back in 2019, so it's already been like 4 years ago, you might have heard me talk about this, but my husband gifted me, it was both of us, an introductory course into CrossFit. CrossFit is a gym, but it's also like classes, and you go and you work out and you feel like you're gonna die, and then you get stronger, and you find out you can do things you never thought you could do before. And in the course of kind of joining that gym, I also began to work individually with one of the coaches there, especially on my nutrition, but also on my movement, and really needing things tailored to me. And one of the things I began to notice and see was how everything in CrossFit, and I think it's true, I'm not at a CrossFit gym anymore now. I go to a local gym here in Yankton. And again, working with a nutrition coach, working with the coaches, one of the things that you see in the fitness world, at least I hope that you do, I think if they're any good, you'll see it, is this understanding that every body is different and has different needs. And so there's a sense of when you go to a class, we're all assigned, here is your basic movements for the day that are targeting these different areas, maybe different muscle groups. So maybe you're doing some squats, or you're doing some lunges or some deadlifts or some presses, some different things. But again, with this idea of targeting kind of the different areas of your body, making sure that you are all over strong. Because if you go to the gym and you only ever do bench presses, well, your arms and your chest are going to be strong, but your legs are not. It doesn't do anything for your legs, right? So like without some guidance, you can get really lopsided in your workouts. But also every body is different. And so, really good coaches begin to understand that how to tweak things, right? And how to maybe substitute things out, and how to really tailor something directly to the person based on their body and based on their goals. So at the gym I'm at currently, they talk about there's really 3 different goals, and sometimes they can be kind of competing goals for why a person is at the gym. One goal might just be, I want to be healthier, I want to feel better. So that's one goal of just kind of like longevity of life. I just want, my body to function. There's also the aesthetic, like I want to look good. If you're putting all the work in the gym, like I want it to look good. Well, that is a little bit different journey to accomplish that goal. And the third goal is if you're competing, performance. And so like my husband competes, and so when he's working out, and especially when he's in his training mode, that looks different. His diet looks different, his workouts look different, because he has a different goal in mind. So again, I really became captured by this idea of tailoring a program to the person. So you start off with kind of a basic, generalized, everybody needs to be attending to all of these things in some way, right? You need to attend to your arms, shoulders, you need to attend to your abs, your core, you need to attend to your legs and your whatever. But how each person does that and what they're capable of doing, and maybe the areas that they really need to focus on, changes from person to person. And so having the ability to adapt and to really understand someone's individual goals and needs, for me, became what was really valuable about that kind of program. And it allowed for me to accomplish some really major goals at that time in my life. I had just had my second baby, and I lost 60 pounds in a year and started doing things I never thought I would ever do. Toward the end of that year, I began running regularly. I ran my first 5K. Never in my life did I think I would be able to do that. Not that I did it fast by any means, but just to do it without stopping. That was beyond what I believed was possible for me. And yet I found that I could do it. When I started, I couldn't hardly jump up onto 2 plates, like weightlifting plates that you put on the end of a bar. And by the time we had moved to Yankton, I was jumping 18 feet. 18 feet? Oh my gosh, I wish. No, I'm not a frog. 18-inch boxes, which is 1.5 feet when I went from this to 1.5 feet. So again, like I saw progress because I had the input and the help and the support to accomplish the goals that I wanted to accomplish, and someone who was cheering for me, rooting for me, and guiding me along the way. And so I began to wonder, could I apply this kind of structure, this kind of system to discipleship, where instead of it being your physical body, but really becoming your soul and your faith, and as the pastor, really becoming like that spiritual coach for you. And so that's what really inspired me to start developing this system. So I call it Disciples Developing Disciples, because honestly, the idea is that we're all going to be doing this together. You don't have to have like specialized training, but really we're going to be pouring into each other, and we're going to be working at this together. So this is one of the things that has kind of shifted. And initially, it really was just a coach, like individual sort of relationship. But what I began to realize is that that's a lot for one coach. And so again, I went back to the gym model and say, okay, how do they handle this, right? You either have a bunch of coaches, or you start really looking at getting people together that have similar interests, similar goals, and having them kind of become a group together that can encourage one another. So I'll give an example again in my own life. Now I go to the gym. I go to the gym at this point, I'm at 5 days a week. And 4 of those 5 days are like 5:15 in the morning, which I talk about all the time. But honestly, again, it's one of those things where it's like I never thought that would be me. And so there's a little bit of disbelief and disconnect that I'm really there. But I've developed such strong bonds with the women that are there at 5:15 in the morning with me. We come from very different walks of life. We all have different kinds of jobs and family situations, but we are bonded over this shared goal that we have, this shared interest, this shared commitment to be at the gym and taking these classes at this time. And that has really encouraged me, and it's gotten me there on days where I didn't want to be there because I knew I would see them and I knew they would text me if I didn't see them. And so I began to again get inspired by this sort of group accountability aspect. And so again, I'm taking something that I've seen elsewhere, that I've participated in, that has been beneficial, and I'm translating that into the life of the church. Again, because not everything is one size fits all. Not every program fits people. And I wanted to create something that would be able to really meet people in their need, help them identify that need, but then also help to walk with them in that journey. And so when I started both of the programs, so the one in 2019 and the one that I'm doing now, the first thing that they do, and I tell you, it's not super fun, is a body scan. They have a special machine that they use, and it measures your skeletal muscle mass weight. It measures the amount of water you have in your body, measures the amount of fat you have on your body in a very detailed sort of way. So it's a lot more informative than just stepping on the scale, because again, muscle weighs more than fat, and they want to see, how much muscle do you have in your arm? How much muscle do you have in this arm, in your core, in your legs? Where do you need to focus on? Again, so that initial scan says, this is where you are. Hey, look, like in my scan, dude, I've got muscles for days in my arms, apparently. I have more than the recommended amount. It's well over 100% of the muscle mass in my arms. Now you can't see it because it's got a lot of cushion on there, but it's in there. And so they're saying, you know what? Your arms are actually really strong, and that's awesome. But your legs, even though they are strong, they're not at the recommended levels for the rest of your composition, your body composition. Comparatively, that's an area that you can focus on. Your core has some strength, but we can see from my personal surgery history, I've got some scar tissue in my abdominal area that makes some of the core movements harder. So it's like, again, very particular, very tailored to me. All right, now that we see where we are, it gives us a better map of where we can go and what we can focus on that will help you see improvements in your physical health. So I have devised the same type of thing, but for your soul. And so I'm going to actually pull this up for this video because I want to walk through it with you. Okay, let me put this down here. All right, so this is the soul scan. So again, I'm taking this, I was very inspired by, if I can make this a little bigger maybe, by my experiences. And so again, I'm using the same kind of language. So you have your name, your date here. In the three areas that we really developed the first time I walked through this program with the First Church was, for discipleship, there's really three areas of focus that need to be in balance, that need to be addressed in order to be health. So you think of it in the same way of like, you got your arms, your legs, and your core, right? There's obviously more muscle groups than that, but just for the sake of analogy. So the three that we understood to be community, devotion, and service. And so those are the three areas that we're going to look at and really scan, if you will. So the first is participating in the life of the community. Now, these questions all are very specifically asking for in the last year, because one of the things that we had realized and that I've learned is that sometimes we think, well, 10 years ago, I did all of this stuff. So yeah, I've been very active, but then in the last 10 years, maybe you've done very little. And faith is not something that you can just build up and then it stays. Faith is constantly fluctuating. The more we're active, the more it grows. But as we become inactive, it begins to shrink. It doesn't ever really stay at any one place. It's not a static thing. It is a constant ebb and flow. And so we really, again, want to look, what have you been doing in the last year? And in this in particular, what's really helpful is maybe think of it in terms of since COVID. What have I done since COVID? Because again, life prior to that looked very different than life post-COVID. And that I think is a helpful, so think of it in the last year, but I would even go so far as to say since post-COVID. So I regularly attended worship services for spiritual renewal. You'll notice following these are 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 means this is, yes, absolutely. Maybe for you, it means I've been here every week. Every week for the last year, my face has been in that church building unless I was sick or not in Yankton. So maybe that's a 4. I've left these pretty vague for a purpose. So what does it mean for you to regularly attend? Maybe it's two out of 4 Sundays is a regularly attend because of maybe you're working the other 2. So every Sunday that you could be here, you were here. You get to define that, what that means to you. And if you feel are you accomplishing what you need to with attending worship services? So 4 is like 100%. This absolutely describes me. There's really not a lot of wiggle room for me to grow in this area. 1 means I'm never there. I haven't been to a worship service maybe since Christmas, and maybe it was only Christmas kind of a deal. And then 2 or 3 are somewhere in the middle. I was very intentional as well, not to give you 5 options, so you had a strict middle one. I wanted you to go one way or the other with this. Again, there's no wrong answers here. There's also no judgment here. This is just a starting point. Remember, in my body scan that I did with the gyms, there was no judgment by the people at the gym when my fat content on my body came back over 50%, which is not great. They never said, oh my gosh, how did you get so fat? They never said that. They said, okay, this is where we are. This is what your body looks like right now. And now let's talk about what you want to see happen. And that's the same that I'm going to say to you. Again, the only person who sees these soul scans apart from you is me. No one else sees them. And the only reason I'm looking at them is because I've been called here to serve you in your faith. And these give us good information for us to help you grow in your discipleship. The second one is I've actively prayed for others in the church and beyond. Part of our membership vows are to be praying for one another. And so that's why that's in there, is really we have been called to pray for each other. The third is I've cultivated relationships with friends and spiritual mentors. There is one of my favorite scripture stories is about a man who was healed because he was a paralytic. He couldn't walk. His friends picked him up on the blanket, carried him to the roof of the house where Jesus was teaching, cut a hole in the roof, dropped him in, and Jesus said, "You are healed by the faith of your friends." And for me, that's always been really a valuable story about what we can be as the church. But that also means that who your friends are and the people that you surround yourself with matter. And do you have close people in your life that you can learn from and grow from as a disciple? And if not, are you intentionally seeking some of those things out? The next is I invested in my immediate family relationships. Like it or not, if you have an immediate family, which we all do to some extent, That's part of your calling, is to invest in those relationships, to work on them, to try to find healing in them, especially if you are a parent or a grandparent, are really investing in those next generations to make sure that you are being the best parent, grandparent that you can be. I've given faithfully to the church and its mission. If you are a member of the church, if you have taken the membership vows, you have vowed to give financially to the church, because what we do here costs money. And if you do not give, if we cannot meet our budget, then we cannot do the mission that we've been called to do. And so if you are a member and have not been giving faithfully to the church, that might be a really great area of growth. But it also helps us in trusting and becoming dependent upon God. Again, all of these things go back to your own definition of what it means for you to give faithfully. The next one is, I have invested in the spiritual life of another person. Have you really spent some time in developing not only your own faith, but in the faith of someone else? Because again, all of us have been given the Great Commission, which is to go make disciples of all nations. That wasn't just given to pastors. It wasn't just given to Jesus' 12 disciples. It was actually given to everybody, that we are all to make disciples. That's why this is called Disciples Developing Disciples, because we all are called to be invested in the spiritual life of another person. That might look like being a confirmation mentor, being a youth group leader, being a 605 leader, investing in VBS, being a small group leader. Those are all ways that we invest in the spiritual life of another person. Devotion. Devotion is really going to look like our spiritual disciplines and things like that. So in the last year, I have faithfully participated in Bible studies, small groups, or adult Sunday school classes. What have you been doing to grow your knowledge? None of us are biblical experts by any means. We all have, I think, room to grow in this area, but have you been committing to that? Have you been making time and space for that? Have you found a group yet? And if not, maybe it's your call to start a group. I have a growing relationship with God through a regular prayer practice. So I know that there's 2 prayers on here, but the first one is praying for others. It's very intentional that we are praying for others. In the devotion one, this is your time with God. This is your conversation. This is developing that relationship. So it's not necessarily just praying for other people, but also having that conversation with God. The third one is, I have a regular habit of reading the Bible. Again, you get to define what that means to have a regular habit, but do you have one? Do you read your Bible? And if not, that might be an area of growth for you. In service, that is you've heard me talk a lot about this. In the last year, I've served or worked with a team, committee, or board within the church. And so have you done some kind of maybe on the leadership team, or maybe you've helped with some different things along the way? So that would be on that one. I've regularly volunteered within the life of the church, teacher, usher, greeter, leader, those types of things. Have you volunteered for that at all? If not, that'd probably be a 1. If you volunteer for everything, that would be a 4 if you're somewhere in the middle. You see what I'm saying? I have participated in the mission opportunities within our community and beyond. This would be like, have you done the banquet? Have you done Loads of Love? Have you helped with our, angel tree stuff? Have you helped with our sweetheart tree? Have you done those things when we're out in the community, maybe Habitat for Humanity, things like that, that we as a church are trying to promote and do together? I have used my talents, gifts, or interests to serve the church. Are you musical? Are you gifted in hospitality? Are you gifted in baking or cooking? Are you gifted in doing landscaping? Because I will tell you, that is not one of my gifts. There are so many ways in which you can give back, using your gifts and using your talents. It's not all things that have to be flashy and upfront. It can be things that maybe nobody knows that you do it, but you are doing it for God's glory. And the final one, I've shared my faith with others. Isn't that one of the biggest ones? This is why we do God Moments, is to help you practice sharing your faith with others. And this little piece right here, I don't want you to skip over. It says goal intention, and this is really important. In the next year, I would like to grow my discipleship by focusing on this area. And so I'd like you to go through these different lines we have here. And if you have one that's a 1 or a 2, maybe, or maybe a 3, that you were like, I really haven't done this. This seems like I didn't realize that maybe this would help me grow in my discipleship. Pick one of those things. So maybe it is volunteering in the life of the church. So you're going to write volunteering, or maybe you'll put a star there or something. And then that's going to be the thing that when I follow up with you and kind of that's what we're going to focus on. So you tell me what you want to focus on, and I will take my lead and my cue from you. All right, and then on page 2, this is a little bit different, but it's also super important. If you are a member of the church, even if you're not, but you believe that this is your church, you're committed to being here, one of the things is we really need everybody to participate. And so we want everyone to pick at least 2 areas that they're going to commit to for the 2023-2024 school year. So this is what I'm asking for. You pick 2 things that you're like, put my name on that list, and then we will be following up with you. So let's say I can be a greeter. So your name is going to go on the list with all the other people who are greeters, and then we're going to divide up the Sundays, and then you're going to get on the greeting schedule. Same for ushering, same for fellowship host, same for 605 and youth group volunteer. We're going to take the names of people who said, you know what, I can do that. You're not going to be asked to do it every time unless you really want to, and then you absolutely can. Special music, if you want to read scripture for worship, we probably have people, trustee work teams, things that we can be doing around the church. So if you are like, I can come in and help, pick up sticks or whatever, that would be that kind of thing. A small group leader, if you want to jump in with the care casseroles ministry, the loads of love laundry mission, the banquet, the angel tree, sweetheart tree, helpful, the reminder, community garden. Worship musical group is like if you want to sing in the choir, the bell choir, the praise team, any of that kind of stuff. VBS volunteer and leadership team. Leadership team does require an application, but hey, if you check that, we're going to make sure that we're following up with you and really getting a sense of what you might feel called to. There are other things, so maybe what I'll do is add some blank lines for you to write in the other things that you would like to be doing, or maybe already are doing that aren't on this list. So the first thing you do is you turn in that soul scan. Again, the only person who's going to see it is me, and then I will follow up with you. And what I will do is give you some resources, give you some ideas for things that you can be working on to really practically achieve some of your goals. But then if there are other people in the church who also have similar goals, so maybe there's someone else who says, I really want to get into volunteering more in the church, and maybe they even checked some of the same things that you did, I'm going to connect you 2 together so that you guys can work together to maybe do some of those things, to say, hey, both of you said you'd be willing to be fellowship hosts, and I see that you've never done that before. I'm going to plug you in with someone who has, but maybe you guys would want to go in together until you get the hang of it. So you're not doing things on your own. You always have someone with you, and you have my support, and you'll have the support of our D3 coordinator. D3 is how I'm going to shorten it, because Disciples Developing Disciples is a little bit long to say. Our D3 coordinator is Marilyn Elwood, who many of you know. So that is kind of how it looks. You do the scan, you get a follow-up with Pastor Katie with my suggestions, my support, my cheerleading and encouragement. And then if there are others who have a similar goal, you'll get plugged in with them as a small, like just, hey, you guys are on the same thing. And then periodically, either Marilyn or I will be checking in with you. And then in the spring, we're going to do a follow-up scan and see how the year has gone. And then every fall, you'll get a new scan, just a new chance to state new goals. Every spring, you'll get to see where you have grown and developed. We did this from January to May with the youth group, and it was phenomenal in the response. They didn't have as much of a choice, but it was incredible to see the growth in just a few short months with the youth and having some real intentionality around growing their faith. And real maturity that happened in those 4 months, again, because someone was checking in and asking those questions. How are you doing with this? How can I help? How can I support you? Have you thought about trying this? Have you tried that? That's part of what I want to do and be here for you for that reason. We're going to be utilizing some of the things we have in the church, like our missions that already exist, along with our Right Now Media account, especially if you have things like if you don't have a regular habit of reading the Bible, we're going to be able to give you some reading plans that might be able to work for you, or maybe to have you watch some videos that help explain the Bible a little bit so that you understand a little bit more of what you're reading, or maybe some more devotional things or Bible studies so that you can get something going with that. So we're going to be sending this out. We're going to also be having a link to it on our website, so you could fill out the soul scan confidentially there, and that would come to me. Or you're going to get this in the mail, and then you can just turn this in at the office. The sooner you get it in, the sooner I will get back to you on what those next steps are. But I'm really excited about this. I really believe that a focus and intentionality around discipleship is just going to make our church so much stronger. And so with that, I'm going to end this episode of What's Going On. If you have questions about it, please let me know. Otherwise, I can't wait to see you when I get back, and God bless. Thank you for listening to this episode of What's Going On. We'd love to have you join us for worship here at the church on Sundays at 10 a.m. You can also find us online via our website at firstumcyankton.org or search for us on YouTube.